the salvage scoop, was not supposed to find anything alive. It was a routine sweep, the kind the crew of the Wandering Reach ran every few days through the Asheville corridor, collecting debris, spent fuel canisters, chunks of rock worth selling at the next port. Nobody paid much attention to the scoop alarm anymore. It always found junk. It always brought back junk. So when the cargo bay doors sealed and the pressure equalized, and Dr. Harlan Briggs sent his apprentice down to log the haul, Nora Callum went alone, carrying a clipboard and expecting absolutely nothing. She heard it before she saw it. A sound low, broken, like something trying to breathe through water. She stopped walking. The sound came again. It was coming from a pod wedged between two crushed fuel canisters near the back wall. The pod was small, military gray, scorched along one side like it had passed through something hot. One corner was completely caved in. Nora set down her clipboard. She crossed the bay slowly, stepping over debris, and crouched in front of the pod. There was a crack along the seam, just wide enough to see light from inside. Warm light, orange and faint like embers. She pulled the manual release. The pod hissed and fell open. Inside was a hatchling dragon. It was small, maybe the size of a large dog, but even curled up and broken it looked like something that could kill a person without much effort. One wing was bent at a wrong angle, the membrane torn in two places. Scales that should have been deep bronze were pale and dull. Its eyes were half open, fever-glazed, unfocused. It was shaking. It looked at her. Nora did not move for 3 full seconds. Her heart was going very fast, and her brain was telling her to back away and hit the emergency alarm on the wall. She did not do either of those things. She reached out and placed both hands, gently, on the side of the hatchling's head. It stopped shaking. Not all at once, slowly, like something draining out of it. The tight, frantic energy went quiet. The hatchling made a sound deep in its chest, not a growl, something softer than that. Nora exhaled. She heard footsteps behind her, fast ones. Then Dr. Briggs said very carefully, "Nora, step away from that." "It's hurt," she said. "I can see that, step away." "It stopped fighting when I touched it." Briggs stopped walking. He stood a few meters back, and she could hear him thinking, the way he always did before he said something he didn't want to say. "That thing could take your hand off." "It won't," Nora said. She didn't know why she was sure, she just was. More footsteps. Captain Dosa arrived with 2 crew members, and then 3 colonist families who had heard the alarm and come to look, which was exactly the kind of thing Captain Dosa hated. He took in the scene, his teenage medic's apprentice kneeling in front of a dragon hatchling with both hands on its face, and said nothing for a long moment. "Is it aggressive?" he finally asked. "No," Nora said. "It's sick. Fever, I think. The wing is broken. There might be internal damage from the pod impact." "How do you know it has a fever?" "It's hot, way too hot even for a dragon, and it's not focusing properly." Briggs moved closer slowly. He crouched beside Nora and looked at the hatchling. The hatchling watched him with dim, tired eyes and did not move. Briggs looked at Nora. She looked back at him. "All right," he said quietly. "Let's get it onto a flat surface." Captain Dosa put his hand over his face. "This is a colony freighter," he said, to no one in particular. "We carry farming equipment and families. We are not equipped for—" He stopped, looked at the hatchling again, looked at Nora. "Fine, medical bay, keep it contained." It took 2 hours to stabilize the hatchling enough that Nora felt safe stepping back. Briggs worked beside her the whole time, grumbling softly about equipment they didn't have and techniques he was improvising from first principles. They cooled the fever with ice packs wrapped in cloth. They splinted the wing with 2 flat pieces of hull plating and medical tape. They cleaned the tears in the membrane with the same antiseptic they used on human wounds, because they had nothing else, and hoped it would work. The hatchling let them do all of it. It watched Nora the whole time. When it finally fell into something that looked like real sleep, Nora sat back against the wall and let out a breath she felt like she had been holding since she opened the pod. Briggs sat down beside her. He was quiet for a while, then he said, "You know what that is, don't you?" "A Drakvan hatchling." "Not just any Drakvan hatchling. The markings on the neck, those are Imperial bloodline marks." He looked at her. "Someone is going to be looking for that child, Nora." She looked at the sleeping hatchling, small and pale and breathing finally, without that terrible wet sound. "Then we'll have good news for them," she said. It was Captain Dosa who came in 20 minutes later, his face a careful blank, and said that long-range sensors had picked up a Drakvan warship at the edge of scanner range. It was holding position. It was not moving toward them. It was watching. 3 days earlier, Emperor Sareth had watched his convoy burn. He had not burned with it. His commanders had pulled him away onto the Ashen Throne, into the safety of faster-than-light retreat while the ambush swallowed everything behind them. 7 ships, 43 soldiers, 4 hatchlings from the Imperial nursery being transported to the frontier colony under heavy guard. He had counted what came back. He counted every morning since. 3 soldiers, no ships, no hatchlings. Until the scan came in. Commander Rail brought it to him without a word, just set the data tablet on the war table and stepped back. Sareth looked at it. A life sign reading faint, pulled from a debris field in the Asheville corridor. Small, warm, Drakvan. Vel. He had not let himself say the name in 3 days. He said it now, quietly, and Rail looked at the floor. They moved the Ashen Throne to the corridor's edge and ran a deep scan. The life sign was aboard a human vessel, a colony freighter called the Wandering Reach. Civilian class. No weapons to speak of. A long, slow ship full of farming families going somewhere unimportant. Rail said, "We board immediately. We recover the hatchling and we leave." Sareth said, "Wait." "Emperor." I said, "Wait." The Ashen Throne had surveillance capability that human ships could not detect. Sareth ran a feed from inside the freighter's cargo bay. The image was grainy, taken from angles that weren't ideal, but it was clear enough. He watched a human girl open the pod. He watched her go still when she saw Vel. He watched her reach out both hands, slow and steady, and place them on his son's head. He watched Vel stop shaking. Sareth stood very still for a long time. In 32 years as Emperor, he had seen diplomats faint at the sight of a Drakvan hatchling. He had seen soldiers, trained, armed, experienced, back against walls and reach for weapons. He had seen entire delegations rerouted around the Imperial nursery because the presence of hatchlings made other species too nervous to function. This human girl was 17 years old, maybe younger. She had a clipboard. She was wearing a medic's apprentice badge, and she had put her hands on the Emperor's son like it was the most natural thing she had ever done. He watched the whole night. He watched her and an older human doctor improvise a wing splint from hull plating. He watched her wrap ice packs in cloth and press them gently to Vel's neck and sides. He watched her talk to Vel in a quiet voice, too quiet for the feed to pick up the words, while she worked. He watched Vel follow her movements with tired eyes, tracking her the way hatchlings only tracked their bonded guardians. Rael stood beside him for most of it. Neither of them spoke. At one point, a group of human children appeared in the doorway of the medical bay and were quickly shooed away by the captain. 20 minutes later, 2 of them came back and set something shiny on the floor near Vel, a bit of polished metal, a small toy. They ran before anyone could catch them. Vel stretched his neck toward it. Rael made a sound, not quite a word. "Say it," Sareth said. "I was going to say the children have no survival instinct," Rael said, "but that does not appear to be accurate." Sareth said nothing. When morning came aboard the freighter, marked by the lights shifting from dim to full, Nora Callum sat down against the wall beside Vel and closed her eyes. She was exhausted. Vel put his head on her leg. Sareth watched his son sleep on a human girl's lap and felt something in his chest that he had not felt in 3 days. Relief and something else he did not have a name for yet. "We could still board," Rael said, quickly, cleanly. "We will not board," Sareth said. "Then what?" Sareth picked up the communication line. He keyed it to the Wandering Reach's bridge frequency and opened a channel. On the feed, he watched the humans freeze, watched every adult in range of a speaker go rigid with fear. The captain's face went the color of old ash. Sareth did not enjoy that, which surprised him slightly. He said 4 words. "Is my child alive?" Silence on the line. He could see the captain opening and closing his mouth. He could see the doctor gripping the wall. He watched a crew member physically push Captain Dosa toward the comm panel and watched Dosa push them back, and for a moment it seemed like no one was going to answer at all. Then a different voice came through, young, steady, not shaking. "Yes," Nora Callum said, "and getting stronger." Sareth stood with his hand on the comm panel for a long moment. Rael was staring at him. Sareth closed the channel. He walked to the viewport and looked out at the small, slow freighter hanging in the dark, full of farming families and one girl who had spent the night fixing what the galaxy had broken. He did not have a response ready for what she had said. That had never happened before. Captain Dosa spent 10 minutes after the channel closed telling Nora, in a very controlled voice, that she was never to answer an Imperial Drakvan communication again. Nora listened. She nodded at the right times. Then she went back to the medical bay because Vel's temperature had come down but not all the way and she wanted to check the splint. The captain did not follow her. He sat in his chair on the bridge and stared at nothing for a while instead. When Sareth opened the channel again 2 hours later, Dosa answered it himself. He lasted about 40 seconds before the silence on the other end became too heavy, and the Emperor's stillness, visible somehow even through audio, became too much. He said one moment and walked very fast to the medical bay. He stood in the doorway. Nora was cross-legged on the floor, reviewing medical notes, Vel asleep beside her. "The Emperor wants to talk," Dosa said. Nora looked up. "Okay. He didn't ask for you specifically." "He will," she said and got up. He did. When Dosa handed the channel over and Sareth heard Nora's voice, there was a brief pause, and then he simply continued, like he had been waiting for her to be the one to answer. Sareth told her he wanted Vel returned immediately. His exact words were careful, formal, the kind of phrasing that made it clear he was not used to making requests. Nora said yes, of course, she understood, and then she said, "One more day." Silence. "The wing splint needs to set properly," she said. "If you move him before it does, the membrane won't heal straight. He could lose full use of the wing. I need 1 more day." Another silence, longer this time. Then Sareth said, "You are asking an emperor to wait." "I'm asking a father to wait 1 day so his son keeps his wing," Nora said. "I think that's a reasonable trade." In the background of the channel, something that sounded like it might have been Commander Rael made a strangled noise. Sareth said, "Very well, 1 day." Nora said, "Thank you. Also, he really likes shiny things. If you have something metal and polished on the shuttle when you come, bring it. It'll make the transfer easier." She ended the channel. Dosa put both hands on the wall and breathed slowly. The day passed. Vel grew steadier. By afternoon he was standing on his own, testing weight on the splinted wing carefully, watching Nora with the focused attention that Dr. Briggs said made him nervous. Not because it looked aggressive, because it looked devoted. "He thinks you're his," Briggs said quietly. "I know," Nora said. "Is that going to be a problem?" She didn't answer because she wasn't sure yet. The colonist children had fully given up on staying away. 3 of them were now sitting in a loose arc a few feet from Vel, offering him things: a button, a piece of foil, a small metal clasp from someone's bag. Vel examined each one seriously. He kept the foil. The children were delighted. Their parents stood in the doorway looking like they wanted to be horrified but couldn't quite manage it. One of the fathers eventually came in, sat down at a cautious distance, and asked Vel a direct question about whether the foil was good. Vel looked at him. The man did not die. He looked quite pleased with himself. Nora watched all of it and felt something she couldn't fully name, like watching a wall come down slowly, one brick at a time. On the ashen throne, Sareth watched the same feed. Rael came to stand beside him around midday and was quiet for a while. Eventually he said, "The children have no fear of it." "No," Sareth agreed. "Our own hatchlings are not socialized this way. They are kept separate, guarded." "Yes." "And Vel is—" Rael paused. "Vel appears to be enjoying the button." Sareth said nothing. Rael said very carefully, "I have served you for 19 years, Emperor. I want to say something and I want you to hear it as loyalty, not criticism." "Say it." "I have been wrong about humans before," Rael said. "I was wrong about their pain tolerance in the Varus campaign. I was wrong about their navigation instincts in the corridor skirmishes. I may have been wrong about other things." He paused. "This girl concerns me, not because I think she is a threat, because I am not sure we have a framework for what she is." Sareth turned to look at him. "What do you think she is?" Rael considered this for a long moment. "I think she is what they all are, and we simply never stayed still long enough to notice." Before Sareth could answer, the alert system chimed. Not a weapons alert, a broadcast alert, something incoming on the Galactic Relay Network. Rael pulled it up. A third-party faction, the same group that had attacked the Imperial convoy 3 days ago, had filed a public claim with the Galactic Council. The claim stated that the human freighter Wandering Reach was holding an Imperial hatchling hostage as leverage. The claim was already on every major relay in the sector. Within the hour, Council peacekeepers were inbound. So were 2 ships from the rival faction, and 3 independent press relays looking for the story. The Wandering Reach was suddenly surrounded, and it hadn't done anything at all. Council Speaker Oren was a nervous man in the best of circumstances. Today was not the best of circumstances. His message to the Wandering Reach came in fast and formal, the kind of words that sounded helpful but meant get out of my way. He told Captain Dosa that the Galactic Council was prepared to take the hatchling into neutral custody immediately, that this would protect the freighter from any further complications, that it was, really, the only sensible path forward. Dosa listened to all of it. He said he would need a moment to consult with his crew. He muted the channel and looked at Dr. Briggs. Briggs looked at Nora. Nora said no. Dosa said, "Nora. He's a patient, not a diplomatic object." She kept her voice flat and even. "The council didn't treat him for 12 hours. They don't get to hand him around like cargo now that he's stable. If we refuse, they could board us. Then they board us, but we're not handing him over." Dosa looked at her for a long moment. He was a practical man who had been running a colony freighter for 11 years and had very good instincts about when to argue and when not to. Something in her face told him this was a when not to situation. He unmuted the channel and told Speaker Oren that the freighter was providing medical care to an injured miner and could not responsibly transfer the patient at this time. Oren did not take that well. Outside, the ships were gathering, 2 Galactic Council peacekeepers sitting off the port side. The rival faction's vessels, smaller, faster, the kind of ships built for harassment rather than war, circling at what they probably thought was a safe distance. And on the starboard edge, quiet and enormous, the Ashen Throne. The rival faction broadcast their claim again, louder this time, pushed to every relay in range. The story was spreading across the sector, humans holding a dragon emperor's child while demanding terms. The message was polished. It sounded very credible. Briggs watched the broadcast come in on the bay screen and said, quietly, They're going to bury us in the story. Nora was already thinking. She said, then we tell our own. She went to the medical bay. She asked Briggs to set up the logging system, the one they used to document patient care for liability records. She told him to timestamp everything. She sat down, pulled up the last 36 hours of treatment notes, and started recording. Not a speech, not a rebuttal, just the record. She spoke clearly and without drama into the recorder. She described what she found in the pod. She described the fever temperature, the wing damage, the approximate impact trauma. She described every treatment, every dosage estimation, every improvised solution, and why she made it. She described the timestamps when Vel ate, when his fever broke, when he stood on his own for the first time. It took 40 minutes. When she finished, Briggs looked at the file size and said, "What do you want to do with this?" "Open broadcast," she said. "Every channel, press relays, council frequency, and the Drakvan military band." He stared at her. "All of it," he said. "All of it," she said. "If they want a story, we give them the real one." Briggs sent the file. Within minutes, every ship in range was receiving a 40-minute medical log narrated in calm, clear detail by a 17-year-old apprentice medic. No demands, no political language, just work, timestamps and treatment notes, and the particular sound of someone who had stayed up all night because there was a hurt thing that needed help. The rival faction's ships went quiet. Speaker Oren stopped transmitting entirely. Nora sat down against the medical bay wall and watched Vel, who was watching her back. He had been watching her since she sat down to record. He hadn't moved. She had talked for 40 minutes about his injuries and his treatment and his recovery, and he had listened to every word like he understood exactly what was happening. Maybe he did. Across the sector, the broadcast spread. Press relays picked it up. It jumped from relay to relay the way things do when they are more interesting than the story that was already running. The rival faction's version of events sat beside Nora's medical log, and they did not look alike at all. On the Ashen Throne, Rael watched Soreth watch the broadcast for the third time. When it ended the third time, Soreth reached for the private channel, not the command line. The direct line, the one that bypassed the captain's bridge and connected to the medical bay terminal. Rael looked at him. "What are you doing?" "What I should have done sooner," Soreth said, and opened the channel. In the medical bay, the terminal lit up. Nora looked at it. Then she looked at Vel, who lifted his head and made a low sound, the same sound from the first night. Soft, recognizing something. She got up and answered it. The terminal screen did not show a face. It showed the Imperial seal, a black dragon coiled around a burning star, and underneath it, a voice line. "Open. Waiting." Nora pulled a stool over and sat down in front of it. Vel padded over from his corner and lay down beside her feet, his chin on the floor, watching the screen like he knew who was on the other end. Soreth spoke first. "I watched your broadcast." "Okay," Nora said. "All of it." "Okay." A pause, then, "Why did you do it that way? No demands, no negotiations, just records." Nora thought about it. "Because the truth was already the best argument," she said. "I didn't need to add anything to it." Another pause. Longer. She had the sense he was choosing his next words with unusual care, like someone reaching for something unfamiliar. "When you first opened the pod," he said, "what did you feel?" She didn't rush the answer. "Scared," she said. "Pretty scared, actually." "But you reached out anyway." He was hurt. You don't walk away from something that's hurt just because it scares you. That's not really a choice. It just isn't one. Silence on the line. A long one. Vel made a small sound near her feet. "In Drakvan culture," Soreth said slowly, "there is a bond called the Varath. It is very old, older than the Empire. It names the guardian of a hatchling, the one the hatchling chooses to attach to in its first vulnerable period." Another pause. The Vareth is considered a legal and spiritual bond. It supersedes almost all other claims, including political ones. Nora was quiet. A hatchling does not choose lightly, Sareth continued. They cannot be tricked into it. They cannot be conditioned into it. It happens or it does not. A beat. I have been watching Vel since we located him. The way he watches you, the way he follows you, the way he stayed beside you while you recorded that broadcast. His voice was steady and even, but there was something underneath it, careful and heavy. He has chosen you as his Varath. Nora looked down at Vel. Vel looked up at her. She thought about the first night, about the way he had gone still under her hands. She thought about the children bringing him foil and buttons, and how he had watched her the whole time even while he was playing. She thought about him listening to 40 minutes of medical notes like they were something important. What does that mean? She asked, practically. Under Drakvan law, it means you hold a claim over his welfare that I cannot override by imperial decree. It means the Galactic Council cannot separate you from him without your consent. It means, he stopped, seemed to recalibrate. It means the rival faction's claim is legally meaningless. The Council's custody offer is legally meaningless. You have standing that outranks both of them. Nora let that settle. You didn't have to tell me that, she said. No, he agreed. You could have just come and taken him back, and the Council probably would have allowed it eventually. Yes. So why tell me? Sareth was quiet for a moment. Then he said, because you stayed up all night for my son and you did not ask for anything, and because I am tired of conducting every interaction like a war I need to win. Nora didn't say anything. She put her hand on Vel's head and he leaned into it. I don't want a legal claim, she said after a while. I want him to heal. I want that wing to work right. I want him to be okay. He will be, Sareth said, because of what you did. Then, without any announcement, the tone of the situation outside changed. The rival faction's ships had gone quiet since the broadcast, but they hadn't left. Now Sareth contacted the Galactic Council on the main relay band, not a private channel, a full public transmission, and invoked the Vareth bond on behalf of Vel. He named Nora Callum of the Wandering Reach as the bonded guardian. He stated that any attempt to remove the hatchling from her care without her consent would be treated as an act of aggression against the Drakvan Empire. He deactivated the weapons lock on the Ashen Throne and stated that the matter was closed. Speaker Oren did not respond for almost 3 minutes. When he did, it was to confirm acknowledgement of the imperial statement and to announce that the council peacekeepers were standing down. The rival faction's ships left without a word. On the Wandering Reach, the crew watched the ships disappear from the scanner, and no one made a sound for almost a full minute. Then someone, somewhere in the ship, started clapping. It spread slowly, unevenly, like people weren't entirely sure it was allowed yet. In the medical bay, Nora sat on her stool with her hand on Vel's head and listened to the ship get louder around her. Briggs appeared in the doorway. His eyes were a little red, which he would probably deny later. You want to tell me what just happened, he said. I think we're okay, Nora said. Is the Emperor coming here? Vel lifted his head. His eyes went to the door. He made the low sound, the warm one, and his tail moved slowly back and forth. Nora looked at him, looked at Briggs. Yes, she said, he's coming. The docking clamp connected with a sound like a door being shut firmly, and then there was silence. Captain Dosa had lined up every crew member he could find on short notice, which was most of them. They stood in the cargo bay in 2 uneven rows, dressed in whatever clean things they owned, trying hard to look like people who received imperial visits regularly. The colonist families had been asked to stay in their quarters. Most of them were pressed against the corridor windows anyway. The airlock opened. Sareth came through alone. No guards, no ceremony. He had to angle his shoulders slightly to clear the frame, and the ceiling of the Wandering Reach's cargo bay gave him about half a meter of clearance, which looked like just enough. He was armored dark plates along the shoulders and chest, the imperial mark on his throat, but he had left his weapons on the shuttle. Everyone noticed that. No one said anything. He looked at the 2 rows of crew members standing at rigid attention. He looked at Captain Dosa, who was doing an admirable job of holding his face steady. He looked at Dr. Briggs, who was gripping his own wrist very tightly. Then he looked at Nora. She was standing at the end of the row, Vel beside her. Vel had heard the airlock before any of the sensors caught it. He was standing up straight, tail up, watching Sareth with wide, bright eyes. The most alert Nora had seen him since she found him in the pod. Not scared, not defensive. Happy. Sareth went still. He looked at his son, healthy, upright. Wings splinted but held correctly, scales beginning to come back to their proper color, and something moved across his face that wasn't imperial and wasn't controlled. It was just a father looking at a child he had thought he lost. Vel took 3 quick steps forward and pressed his head against Sareth's chest. The cargo bay was so quiet that the sound of Sareth's hand coming down on the back of Vel's neck, slow and careful, the way you touch something precious, was audible across the whole room. He stood there for a moment with his eyes closed. Nobody moved. When Sareth lifted his head, his face was composed again. He looked at Nora and walked toward her, and she stayed where she was because walking backward felt wrong, and also because her legs were somewhat insisting on remaining still. He stopped in front of her. He was very large, she was very much not. He went down on one knee. It was not a small gesture. It was a full formal Drakvin bow, head low, one hand open on the floor, the posture that in Drakvin tradition meant I acknowledge a debt I cannot fully repay. Captain Dosa made a sound that he quickly converted into a cough. Briggs stopped breathing. Sareth rose. He looked at her directly. I have a question, he said. Not a demand, a question with a genuine answer of no available to you. Nora nodded. Vel has chosen you, he said. The Varath is real and it is his, not mine to grant or remove. What I can offer if you are willing is a formal arrangement. You and your family will carry imperial protection. No ship, no station, no faction in the known galaxy will move against you. In return, you would serve as Vel's bonded companion during his recovery and his early training years. You would have standing at the imperial court, voice in matters concerning his welfare. He paused. You would be the first human to hold such a position. I will not pretend that comes without difficulty, but it would be real and the protections would be absolute. Nora was quiet for a moment. What does Vel want? She said. Sareth looked at his son. Vel had moved back to Nora's side during the speech and was now sitting beside her foot, leaning lightly against her leg. I think, Sareth said, that is his answer. She looked down at Vel. He looked up at her. His eyes were fully focused now, clear and warm, nothing like the fever-glazed half-awareness from the pod. She thought about the first night, about ice packs and hull plating and medical tape, and a small creature that had chosen to trust her before she had done anything to earn it. Okay, she said. Dosa exhaled so hard it was nearly a word. The formal arrangements took less time than anyone expected. Sareth was direct, and his legal staff, connecting from the Ashen Throne, were efficient. By the time the paperwork was done, actual paperwork, Nora signed 3 documents with an imperial seal. The corridor windows were crowded with colonist families who had completely given up on pretending they weren't watching. One of the children waved at Vel. Vel's tail moved. At the airlock, Sareth paused and turned back to the cargo bay full of humans, crew, and colonists pressed together, all of them watching. He did not make a speech. He was not that kind of person. He simply looked at them the way you look at something you have misjudged and are only now seeing clearly. Then he left. Nora walked out behind him, Vel at her side, through the cargo bay and into the docking corridor. She didn't look back. She could hear the ship behind her, the noise of people exhaling, of tension leaving a room all at once, of someone starting to laugh and then others joining in. The Galactic Press relays, still monitoring the situation, captured a single image from the docking corridor camera. Emperor Soreth walking toward his shuttle, Vel trotting at his left side, Nora Callum walking between them, her hands in her pockets, her head level. No weapons, no treaties signed under threat, no war won or lost. Just three beings going the same direction. The Drakvan Empire did not fall that day. It did not conquer anything, or gain territory, or add to its power in any way that could be measured by the usual measures. It simply met a human girl who didn't know she was supposed to be afraid. And it was never quite the same after that.